Hey guys! So today I'd like to show you 10 games that are, in my opinion, the best prequels ever made. Not that there are many JRPG prequels out there, sadly, but hey, it's something. And by prequel, I mean a game that came afterwards or was released afterwards, the first in the series. Okay? So with that in mind, let's begin. Number 10. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. You know that I'm not actually fond of the Kingdom Hearts series. I think they're overrated games, but to be honest with you, I really liked the second one for the PS2 and enjoyed 358.5 days for the Nintendo DS. Another prequel as a matter of fact. But the prequel that I enjoyed the most was Birth by Sleep for the PSP. Well, actually I played the PS3 version, which is Birth by Sleep Final Mix, and it was good enough to make it on the list. It takes place 10 years before the first Kingdom Hearts, by the way, and you don't play as Sora. You can choose between 3 new characters, one of them being a Roxas lookalike kid. I chose Aqua, the girl, because I liked her the most, and then went for Terra, this big guy here. The thing is, you get to enjoy the story through different points of view, because the game forces you to play the 3 routes in order to reach the ending. It's not as good as Kingdom Hearts 2, of course, but it was decent enough to appear in one of my tops. Number 9. Suikoden IV. Okay, you're tired of seeing this game in my videos. It's the last time, I promise. But hey, maybe you're a newcomer to my channel? Welcome! Let me tell you then why I picked it for the list. If you're not familiar with the Suikoden franchise, it's a dead series that started on the PS1 back in 1995 with all games loosely based on an idea from the classic Chinese novel called By the Water. The first 2 Suikoden games came out for the PS1, then the third one for the PS2, all of them being consecutive. However, Suikoden IV came out a few years later in 2004, and now it was a prequel, the prequel to all Suikoden games, since it takes place 150 years before the first Suikoden. Now, people have panned this game with criticism because it's the least good Suikoden of the entire franchise. But like I've said a million times before, in all of the videos where I've talked about this RPG, least good doesn't equal bad. It's still a great game in my opinion, and therefore, considering not too many JRPG prequels are out there, I decided to include it in this video. Baten Kaitos Origins. It might surprise you why this game didn't make it much farther into the list, but the truth is, even if I admit it's a great RPG, I'll never forget how I rage quit on it after a certain boss battle. Nevertheless, it's still a memorable experience. It is the prequel to the first Baten Kaitos. Thankfully not an underrated game anymore, since more and more people have begun to appreciate it nowadays. It came out in 2006 and it was the last JRPG to be released for the GameCube. It takes place 20 years prior to the first game. It's very good, also underrated, true solid story, beautiful art and great soundtrack. I still prefer the battle system in the first Baten Kaitos, but this one doesn't stay behind at all. It's also great and very unique. I've talked about these 2 games a million times before as well, but I don't think I'm tired of recommending them. It might be one of my goals to make them more well known, something that I think has worked pretty well so far ever since I started this channel. Number 7 is Drakengard III. The infamous Drakengard III, an excellent hack-and-slash RPG that everyone criticized for many different aspects. I already covered those aspects in the most infamous RPG Part 2 video, so now I'm gonna talk about its chronology. This game allegedly is a prequel to the first Drakengard for the PS2. It was released at the end of 2013, and it takes place around 100 years before the first game. You know, the interesting stuff here is how many people on the internet have tried to explain the chronology and lore of both the Drakengard and Nier series. Some of them are pretty solid, while some others leave tons of holes at certain points. However, no one has been actually able to factually explain this situation, especially with games like Drakengard III and its alleged 100 years before the first Drakengard, since it follows a separate timeline, almost as if taking place in an entirely different universe. I'm not an expert, so I won't try to explain the chronology myself. All I know is that this is an excellent action RPG, and that its creators have said that it's a prequel to the first two games. Next is Star Ocean IV: The Last Hope. Another excellent action RPG and my personal favorite Star Ocean. Well, I didn't know the Star Ocean games were connected until a couple of months ago, and I chose this game for the list because it is precisely another one of those games that takes place many years before the first game in the series. In this case, it's 336 years. So how can this game even be considered as a true prequel, right? Well, that's the developer's decision, so I'm no one to argue on that. All Star Ocean games have their own calendar. SD stands for Space Date, which starts right after the year 2096, where a third world war finally led Earth into an alarming state of decay. That's why people began trying to find other planets to live in through space. That's pretty much the gist of almost every Star Ocean game, but it is actually part of the main plot in The Last Hope. So in that regard, I thought it was a pretty good prequel, since it's kind of the start of everything. Number 5. Tales of Berseria. I usually don't include games on tops that I haven't played, but I've heard so many great things about this game, and since not a single Tales of title has been able to disappoint me, not even Cesteria, which spawned this alleged prequel, I think Berseria is a great game that I will actually enjoy one day. I don't know much about it though, except for the small details I gather on my research. And well, guess what? It's a lot worse than Star Ocean IV. This game doesn't take place 100 or 300 years before Tales of Cesteria. No, it's around 1000! But at least they're supposedly on the same timeline, and some of the current events in Cesteria are actually explained here, according to what I researched. In any case, that's all I know. I hope one day I get to play this awesome game, because it looks very good, and somehow I get the feeling I'm going to love it when I do. However, I don't know yet if that's true, which is why I left it halfway through the list, so I don't regret anything else later. Number 4. Lufia II: Rise of the Sinistrals. Lufia II is one of my favorite Super Nintendo RPGs, and I think it's the only one out of the 4 that I actually love. I say 4 because the 5th game was its remake for the Nintendo DS, and I haven't even played it. Released in 1995 in Japan, Lufia II is a prequel to the first Lufia, with its original name being Biography of Estpolis, which is pretty self-explanatory, since it takes place 99 years before, and it explains the story of how the Sinistrals appeared in the world. Even though the first Lufia is a pretty decent game, I gotta confess that I hate it. Too many random encounters and a mess of a battle system. Those two things were destroyed in the second Lufia, which is why I loved it. I wonder if someone out there could tell me if the remake is any good. From what I understand, they made some drastic changes, and I'm really curious as to know if they were good or bad. But Lufia II for the SNES? That's a really awesome game. Number 3. Growlancer III: The Dual Darkness. Released in 2001 but brought to us until 2004 in Growlancer Generations, along with the second game, Growlancer III is, chronologically speaking, the beginning of the trilogy. With the next games in the series, they separated both timelines and worlds, so they are supposedly not connected at all to the first 3. Now, the first game came out for the PS1 in Japan, later ported to the PSP. Neither one of those versions has been fan-translated or released anywhere else in the world. So this game is a prequel to a game that none of us has actually played in English. It is the beginning of the series, taking place in a world within a state of absolute decay, and it's another one of those 1000 years before prequels. It's an excellent strategy RPG with a real-time battle system that I praised before in previous videos. Sadly, this series is dead and there doesn't seem to be any plans on reviving it or even localizing the last game, which was Growlancer 6 for the PS2. But in any case, Growlancer 3 is a great game. Number 2 goes to Fire Emblem: The Blazing Sword. Here we have another prequel to a game that never came out of Japan. Fortunately though, Fire Emblem: The Binding Blade, also known as Fire Emblem 6, is a game for the Game Boy Advance that you can nowadays play in an emulator since it was fan-translated many years ago. I suggest you do that because you'll be playing with the sons of the protagonists of The Blazing Sword, this game I'm showing you right now. This one was released in 2003 and it was the very first Fire Emblem to be brought outside Japan. So we got the game named simply as Fire Emblem. It takes place 20 years before The Binding Blade, now playing as Roy's father Eliwood and Lilina's father Hector. Lyn, the third protagonist and one of the most popular characters in the franchise nowadays, doesn't seem to have a direct connection to any of the characters from the previous game, ironically. Anyways, this is one of the best Fire Emblem games out there in my opinion, and it's a game that I've also praised a million times before because it's just so damn good. Number 1, Suikoden V. This is a prequel that makes much more sense than all the others on this list, but at the same time it doesn't. Let me explain. It does because it takes place only 6 years before the events of the first Suikoden, but it doesn't because it's on an entirely different continent with an entirely different conflict. Connections between the two games are obviously present, but far from being directly connected. I've always said this before, but all Suikoden games are standalone titles and you don't need to play the first one to understand the second one or the fourth one, which is the oldest chronologically speaking, to understand any other. Now, if you want to fully comprehend the story and history of the entire world these games take place in, then you might want one day to play them all in chronological order, just out of curiosity. Suikoden V came out in 2006. It was a commercial success, but was overshadowed by many other games and RPGs from the PS2 generation and also the PS3 one. No other canonical title was released after this, sadly. The series died because the development team had a fight and couldn't sort out their differences. So tragic, since they left us with quite a wonderful world to explore and a great classic that's nowadays considered as one of the best Suikoden games ever made. Okay guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it to your liking. Don't forget that I have a Patreon page, so you can support this channel and support me as a creator. Even if you donate $1, that's a lot. Don't worry, it's helped me a lot. So I hope you reconsider this and become my patron to help me grow as a YouTuber and make this channel even better. As usual, I want to thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and share this with your friends. See you next time.